all good. Welcome to another episode of Journeys by Steph. Today's guest is a certified public accountant by qualification who turned into a leading lifestyle and content creator in Oman and is a mom of two, Rachel George. Rachel, welcome to our podcast, Journeys by Steph.
Thank you, Steph, for having me.
It's a pleasure. As you know, our podcast is all about creating, this intercultural awareness. And you are someone who comes from a very diverse background.
Yes.
And so we would love to know about your journey today. So why don't you start by telling us a bit about your overall journey?
So I am born to Malayali parents. Kerala, that's from Kerala, but I've lived in Oman my whole life. So I feel more Omani at heart. And if you ask me where is home, Oman is home.
Okay.
But by passport, I'm Indian. And I'm married to half Mangalorean, half Tamil. So he's Indian, but not really from where I belong. We speak two different languages. And I'm raising two amazing boys who, again, Indian, but feel more Omani than Indian. So we're like citizens of the, the
Universe,
world.
yeah.
Yes. So that's a bit about me. I've studied in Oman most of my schooling. I did 3 years of boarding school, and then I did my undergrad in Australia, Melbourne, and I did my CPA from there.
Okay. And I understand a part of your upbringing was in Oman, but also boarding school was...
In India.
In India.
Yeah.
Okay.
That was just 3 years.
Okay.
So Oman was home for me like all throughout.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what was the reason that you kind of went back to India in the first place?
I think my parents, because my mom was working and I'm an only child.
Okay.
And I grew up with this other family friend who had two children, and they were going to boarding school. And when they decided to go, my parents were like, maybe it's good that you also experience, because in Oman, we live in a bubble. And I would just visit India during the holidays, which was the summer holidays, or during winter when my parents would go for a bit. And, I never really... Everyone in India looks at me like I'm from the Gulf, they would say, the Gulf kid. So I think my parents just really wanted me to maybe experience India, but I went to a really posh boarding school, so I don't really think I experienced India,
Okay.
But yeah, so.
So what do you because this is interesting, right? What do you kind of consider yourself as?
This is what I say. I say I am Indian by passport, but Omani at heart.
Okay.
But again, my husband and I were just discussing this the other day. We, like a lot of my other friends who live in other parts of the Middle East, who are from other countries, but who are raised in the Middle East their whole life. We live in a very protected, in a different kind of environment where we don't, even though we say we are Omani, we are still culturally different from the local Omanis. So a lot of my closest friends are Omanis, both my husband's and mine, because this is where we've grown up.
Of course.
And culturally, I think we have a very mixed sort of outlook towards culture. We're not very Indian. We follow a lot of the Indian values and cultures, but we are also, I would say, a little bit more international. We don't. We're a little bit more broad-minded than the average, at least I would think that I'm a little bit more broad-minded than the average Malayali.
Okay.
And my husband thinks that he's a little bit more broad-minded, or maybe a little bit just more exposed, maybe, or it's funny because, when I post things online, even the way I put makeup, they say it's different from the way Indians would do makeup in India. Okay. And I feel it's because I live in the Middle East and I probably follow Middle Eastern trends, when it comes to makeup.
Funny enough, we had one episode with a makeup artist.
Okay.
And we were discussing the whole concept of how makeup actually differs.
It does.
From one culture to the other.
It really does.
Okay.
Because as something as simple as, the kohl, which is the black eyeliner.
Correct.
Most Indians wear it under the waterline, under the eye. And I don't like to wear it under the waterline. I hardly wear kohl. And if I do it, if it's only when I go out and it's on the top. So I think that makes a big difference, because that, as soon as I wear that, I think my eyes do pop up and look like Indian. But if I don't do that, it doesn't seem, and I'm not necessarily, I love India, and it's not, I'm not trying to be not Indian.
Of course.
I am just what I am,
And that is the beauty of this podcast, right? Yes. Regardless of, again, your race, nationality, or anything of that sort. Yeah. It's about who you are as a cultural being,
Absolutely.
who you want to be, and kind of who you want to, portray, or what you want to portray.
Absolutely.
But speaking of which, we also noticed that a lot of your content recently as a content creator has kind of shifted more towards, and is focused a bit more on, what is it being a Malayali person,
Yes.
or, what is it like to be a Malayali, or the difference between you and your kids. So would you
Yes.
kind of, like to elaborate a bit on that?
First of all, I'm so excited that you actually said Malayali. I am so excited that
I said it correctly.
Yes, you did.
Okay.
I'm so excited. Because, up until very recently, up until I started these kind of content, some of my closest friends didn't know the difference between Malayalam and Malayali. And it's actually when one such incident happened, I was like, are you serious? Like, you've been friends with me for like eons.
A very long time.
And you don't know, like, that's not okay. And then I realized that it's probably because I don't talk about it enough or portray that enough, because I just have blended in so well with this international culture that I live in, that maybe I don't talk about it enough or show that enough. So that's when I actually started actually one of my initial first reels was a funny reel about that. And that's what hit it off, because a lot of people resonated with that.
Okay.
The fact that, I think when we live as expats, we're Indians, but we live as expats outside, somewhere along the line, I feel like we just blend in so easily that I don't think it's forgotten, but it's just understood that it's a part of us, but it's not like,
really
brought out in the front,
Yeah. So would you like to maybe explain what is Malayali?
Yes.
Okay. I love the excitement.
Because I feel like I'm educating the world.
And it is. I mean, that's the whole point of this podcast, right?
Yeah. So Malayalam is the language of the Malayalis.
Okay.
So the people from Kerala, which is a southern state of India.
Correct.
The people from Kerala, they're called Malayali.
Okay.
And the language is called Malayalam.
Okay.
Okay, so my parents are both Malayali, so I have grown up, and therefore by default I'm Malayali.
Of course.
And so when I explain this to my children, because now, so what they say, what are they? I say you are half Malayali, because so you're 50% mom and 50% dad, and so 50% Malayali, and then 25% Mangalorean, 25% Tamil. So you see, Malayali overtakes.
Yeah. Okay.
So and because I've grown up in Oman, I've never had to study Malayalam in school, because I went to the Indian school, but it was the CBSE, which was the Central Board of India, which the second language is Hindi.
Okay.
So I can read and write Hindi, and I speak Hindi, which is the national language of India. And Malayalam I only spoke at home. So I never really learned to read or write Malayalam. My parents would teach me, the letters and all of that, but it was difficult because, you're the only person, and it would. But when I went to boarding school, I got exception in my 8th grade, because I went to boarding school for my 8th, 9th, and 10th, and I got an exception to study grade 1 Malayalam.
Oh wow!
So I was like the only kid, kept aside on the side and taught letters. So it was quite like the joke for the rest of the school, because she was like this Gulf kid who doesn't know Malayalam. And so I think even then I kind of just never took it seriously. But then when I went to Australia and I was far from
the family
and far from the culture, and I think that's when I really fell in love with the fact that I was Indian, the fact that I was Malayali, the fact that I loved all the food and I missed the food, because when I was home, I cribbed about it. Exactly like how my kids do about it now.
Yeah.
But it was when I was so far. And back then, I feel like, it was, I would call my parents once a week. It was not like how it is now. We didn't have WhatsApp calls. We didn't have Google Meets. We didn't have any of that. So the connectivity was not that strong.
True.
So I would speak to my parents once a week or maybe twice a week. I don't know. I can't remember. But it was not. We would not be FaceTiming. So it was not like I was seeing my parents. So I really missed them. I'm an only child, and I'm super close to my parents. So I really was homesick. As in, I enjoyed my time there.
Of course.
I loved it. I had a blast. But at the same time, I always missed home, and a part of me wished that either my parents could be closer to me there, or somehow, I don't know, I could have visited them more often, or, so I think that's when I fell in love with,
your heritage?
Yes.
Let's call it?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so during your time in Australia, I'm curious, was there a time where, because that was when you kind of realized that, okay, I kind of want to go back to my roots to a certain extent, but was there like a cultural shock or like a mind shift that happened during your time there because you moved like from one thing completely to another?
Yes. I think when I went to Australia, it was I mean, I was ready to, obviously have fun. I wanted to go from Oman to, like a Western country, and it was great. But it was like, when I was very lucky that I had really good friends, and there were really, some really nice families that took me in the sense of on the weekends I would go and visit them on Sundays, because obviously the weekend there is, Saturday, Sunday. And when I would see how the kids, how the parents dealt with the kids there, it was nice, but the kind of closeness I had with my parents, the kind of respect I had for my parents, the kind of respect my parents had for their parents, I felt like that was lacking a bit. Maybe that's a wrong word, but it was different.
It was different.
For example, like I remember, like, this one family, like the mom would have to go and knock on the kid's door, and I think that's fine because I do that now with my kids. But I mean, my mom would,
open the door.
Yeah, just walk in. And I'm not saying that's the right thing to do. Now, obviously, she doesn't do it because, again, times have changed. She'd knock and, she'd come in like that. But, like, even me now, I'd knock on my kid's door, like, once, maybe twice. If he doesn't answer, I'm going to barge in. That's me. It's my kid, But, also, it's just the fact that, they know how to respect elders. And I felt like culturally there, like, the respect for elders was not that much, and I feel like, I don't know, like I feel like the world needs that. The world needs to respect elders, and these are all things that you learn in, I feel, cultures in this part of the world. And I'm not trying to, name names or like,
Again, the whole point is to kind of bring about, there's no right or wrong when it comes to cultural differences.
Yes.
It's just what we are exposed to, and then what we kind of prefer, what works for us.
Yes.
So you get exposed to different things.
Yes.
And then basically what works for you is how you eventually raise your kids.
Absolutely.
And on that note, you come from, a certain cultural background. Your husband comes from another cultural background. Especially when it comes to India, you have so many different cultures.
Yes.
But how has that somehow impacted the upbringing of your children?
I think in terms of values, my husband and I have similar values, and I think that's why we get along.
And it's very important.
Yes, and that's why it's important. And so we were, and even when we decided to have kids, we kind of knew how we wanted to raise our kids.
Okay.
So I think when I decided to obviously, get married to Rohit, like we knew that we wanted to raise a family according to what we thought was right. And that is, things like, respect for elders, being close to the family above everything. Simple things, really, like, it's not that complicated. Like, I think the world today makes things overcomplicated, and we just want to go back to basics of being really simple. And at the end of the day, like, I'm a big homebody. I know I appear to be something else, but I really am a big homebody. And when my friends see, and my friends who know me, they're like, oh man, if the world only knew, like, how you are, because like how people perceive me on social media, or what comes across on social media is one thing, but what I am is like a totally different thing, I'm really like such a simple person. And for me, like simple things, like simple food, sitting in the garden, enjoying, like seeing, like if it's a windy day, enjoying the breeze, having the kids around, like, just simple things in life, And I'm such a family person. Like any opportunity, I'd go and be with my parents. I'd bring my parents here, so things like that. So I think, so I think this is what I would want for my kids as well, The world is such a huge place, and I feel like, especially with us Indians, we always aim to go or send our kids, to the US, to Canada, to Australia to study, and that's a beautiful thing, because we were always told that the best universities are in these countries, and so we aim to send our kids there. But now India is seeing a trend where a lot of the kids go and study there, and then they come back to India. but I don't know if I would go back to India. But my point is, I would love for families to be together, and I feel it's such a shame because I remember when, when my parents were working, and I would never understand. And it's in India because there's such a huge population of people that, and even now they come and their families are separated. People come here and work and they are separate, and they go maybe once in 2 years, and it's difficult. People live
Very
such
hard.
difficult lives, So I feel like this is so privileged that we get together we can be together as a family, and it's just taken for granted, because I feel like in the West they don't understand the other part of the world. Like when I went to Australia, they don't understand how the majority of the people in this part of the world live, because for them that's normal, and which is fine.
Of course.
So when I come from here, and so for me, I would never think of, and there's nothing wrong in going, and living outside when you were 18 years old, to having your own apartment. But I mean, I would want my kids to stay with me as long as they can. When you get married, okay, fine, go, but stay with me as long as you can, so.
I think it all goes back to what your values are.
Yeah.
And you mentioned a lot about the whole family concept,
Yes.
right? And the togetherness,
Yes.
and being with one another.
Yes.
And that is why you appreciate that.
Yes.
But you also spoke a lot about the whole perception and
Yes.
perspectives of people.
Yeah.
What is maybe one perception that, a lot of people usually have about you that you would, like to change, or not change, that you would like to clarify?
I think a lot of people have actually come and told me, you're actually very sweet. I'm like, oh my
Okay,
God.
talk about judgment.
I'm like, oh my gosh. They're like, oh yeah, because you seem like you can look really arrogant, and I'm like, I am so totally the opposite of arrogant. I really am. So if you just speak to me one word, even if it's just like hi, I would be like hi. If you could just see my smile, like my genuine smile, you will know that I'm not an arrogant person. So yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, did you ever face any kind of stereotype that you felt, now if your kids would face something like that, what would you kind of tell them? Like, was there any kind of experience that really affected you?
Yeah.
That you feel, okay, I know better now, and so with my kids,
Yeah.
this is what my advice would be for them to know how to, accept themselves or deal with it, deal
Yeah.
with those challenges.
I mean, I was really blessed and lucky that I haven't actually ever faced, if you're talking about a stereotype, I mean, I can just...
Any kind of stereotype.
Yeah, so I can talk about
anything.
racism, for example.
You can talk about racism.
And the reason I bring this up was because my son did face bullying and racism in school. So I was lucky that I didn't face in my 40 years of life, I didn't face anything. But it's just unfortunate that in 2024, or 2023 rather, because it happened last year, that my son had to face that. And we stood up like rocks for him and pillars, and he's become a much stronger person because of that. And all we told him was that it doesn't matter the color of your skin, it doesn't matter the color of your hair, it doesn't matter what you eat, because he was bullied for the food he was eating, which was not even like, they were making fun of Indian food. Like, he doesn't even take Indian food to school. So that was why it's a stereotype and so like weird, because he doesn't even take that to school, right? But like, we wanted to tell him it doesn't matter what you eat, it doesn't matter what the color of your skin is, it doesn't matter what the color of your hair is. You are a beautiful human being. Yeah. And it is your heart that matters. It is how you make another person feel that matters. And how you feel and how you have felt, that you wouldn't want anybody else to feel that. So what we obviously, after coming out of that, like, he will now stand up for anyone who faces bullying or any sort of harassment or anything like that, because he knows what it is to feel hurt. So I think it's sad that at a young age he had to face that, but it's also made him stronger. And it's also, together for us as a family, we've been able to stand together with him and say that we are with you. It doesn't matter what somebody else says. We just stand together, we be strong. There will always be people in the world who don't know better, or maybe who know and are just, like, I don't know, like sad people. So you educate them. You know?
That's true. Yeah. No, I think racism is very important because you mentioned it, right? We're in the 21st century, and as much as we have a lot of those, activists or a lot of different things coming out in terms of, okay, stop this and stop calling that, and let's not be separated. Somehow we seem to be separating more than getting together.
Yeah.
And it's sad because you see it, and you're talking about an international school,
Yes.
right? So you're seeing it in a place where you would think that people, might be a bit more accepting. And the whole point of this cultural concept is really just to kind of get people to understand that, yes, racism exists, judgment exists, and all of those exist, but sometimes we need to have this sort of empathy.
Of course.
Empathy towards the other person.
Yeah.
Try to understand,
Yes.
where that other person is coming from. Try to, find common things,
Yes.
between us and the other person, just to be a bit more understanding and, a bit more empathetic. That's
Yes.
the word that I'm looking for.
Absolutely.
But talking about that, and talking about raising your kids, basically your kids are being raised in something that they call like the third cultural space.
Yes.
Right? Where it's not this specific culture or that specific culture. How do you see that impacting them?
I think they are growing as, I keep calling them citizens of the world. Because
In a beautiful way.
Yeah, because I feel like, I think it's important to hold on to certain cultural aspects so that you have some sort of grounding.
Yeah.
And I do tell them and I do teach them a lot of things about just my culture, or but they are different in the sense that they're going to be different from me. They already make it's funny because that's a generational thing as well. They're like, Mama, you like, come on, this is whatever, like they make, so it's just like, oh my gosh, I've become old now.
Oh no, not even close.
No, but you know what I mean. So but yeah, like, I mean, so it's funny because they have a joke because we eat Indian food at home. They eat Indian for lunch, and then they eat like Western food, as in standard any sort of Western food, like a steak and mashed potato or pasta or burger for dinner. So they prefer, as kids now, to eat the Western food as compared to Indian. And I always tell them, I said, boys, wait till you grow up a little bit and you have to go to university. Then you'll be coming back for the Indian food and the food, like,
you'll be missing that so much.
I know. But yeah, so I mean, I think I'm doing the best I can to just keep them exposed to both or all aspects of the world. We travel a lot whenever we can, so they are exposed to other cultures, and we're very we want the kids to travel. We want the kids to know about all the different cultures, all the different, and just literally be citizens of the world, like, yeah.
You recently came from a trip, right?
Yes.
So maybe you can share what is one thing that you found interesting from that trip, or what is one thing that you learned from that trip about, that specific culture?
Okay, so I feel we love going to Thailand, and I feel like in Thailand they are really there's joy in their face. And it's not only, people talk about, that they're very like in the service industry, they are absolutely brilliant. But I just feel like anyone you talk to, they have joy in their face, and you go to a restaurant, you go to a beach shack, you go to a little shop in a corner alleyway, they're just smiling, and they are just greeting you, and and I think it is, like, I always, in my stories, in my social media as well, I keep posting, if you can make one person smile a day, you are making a difference in this world. And so for me, when I see the people in Thailand, I genuinely, this is what the kids and I were discussing. We're like, man, just imagine greeting, like waking up and you just, I don't even know how you can be so happy that early in the morning, and I'm a morning person. But it's just, when you see someone smile that much at you, you just want to smile back. So I feel like, I don't know if, for sure it's a cultural thing, because I have never seen anyone from any other country be as genuinely happy
as they
are, really.
We need to know the secret.
Yeah, they're just really joyful, and whether that's how they're being taught to talk to other people, yeah, I'm sure they have maybe internal strives and internal fights, but just talking to a random person, a random stranger, they make you smile, and I feel that is a nice way, and that's a nice thing we can learn and pass on.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I want to tap a bit more into the fact that you're a very outspoken person.
Yeah.
Right? And you're someone who's not afraid to kind of share what's in their mind.
Yeah.
And I personally vouch for that, and I love it.
Okay.
But I want to kind of get to know a bit more of where did that rebellious side come from?
I think being an only child, I have always kind of, my parents are very traditional,
Okay.
and they're very simple and sweet, and I'm a complete opposite personality of them. So I feel like in order for my personality, and I think this is just a personality, so like as I was growing up, it just had to come out, and I think my rebellious nature has actually tamed down quite a lot.
Oh God.
Yeah. So, but I think it's important to speak your mind. I think it's important to have boundaries. And boundaries are not only in relationships, it's also in your thoughts, your beliefs.
Yeah.
And it's also important for people to know that you stand for certain things and you are against certain things. And it's okay. You don't have to be for everything.
True.
So, yeah, I think I try, and especially because I have a platform and people listen to me, I try my best in my best ability to try and speak up for what I think what I believe in, and also just to be a voice, like just stay strong, like, and to show women that you can be strong. You can be a good wife and still be a strong person. You can be a good mom and still be strong. You can be, irrespective whether you're a wife or a mom, but you can just be a woman, because I think women, we're just generally, or in our culture, we're always told to just be hush and not speak up. It's changing, obviously.
A lot.
A lot. I still, don't get me wrong, I still believe in compromise. I still believe, so I'm not the one who, I don't want to get into feminism and all of that at all. I still believe in compromise. I still believe in, being equal, and I still believe there are many things that the men are strong. For example, physically, men are stronger, and I am I go to the gym and I'm a very strong person. But I'm not going to go and sit and argue with my husband saying, no, I'm stronger than you.
Correct.
There's no need. There's no need to be in competition with everybody. There is enough room for everyone in this world. So I feel like this sense of being ultra competitive just makes people so unhappy. Like, there's no need to be in competition all the time,
So then what would your advice be?
I would say that try and find happiness in, set small goals. It's good to have big dreams, but what I'm saying is, in order to achieve the big dreams, you need to take one step at a time. So, take that first step, and when you achieve that first step, be grateful, be happy, enjoy it, live in that moment. I feel like we're always striving, this world is always striving for that, I want to reach there, but if you look back, maybe, like 6 months ago, you wanted to be where you are right now, and you're not grateful for where you are right now. So my husband always tells me I live in a bubble, and I'm like, I'm very grateful for that
and
bubble.
I'm very happy with my bubble.
Yeah, because I am grateful, really grateful to God for allowing me to be grateful for the moment that I'm in. And don't get me wrong, I have problems like everyone else. Like, I go through a lot of ups and downs.
Of course.
But I come out of it, because at the end of the day, we need to learn to come out of problems, take that next step, be grateful for the next step that you've taken and you've achieved that next step. And it's very simple. I think we overcomplicate things, in life. And
We do.
Yeah.
We do,
So,
all the time.
Yeah.
But do you feel that the way you were raised and where you are plays a role in the fact that you're thinking this way? And do you think that if you were in another place, or if you were brought up in a different way, or maybe if you were brought up, let's say specifically, in a place in India, would that still be the same?
I don't know, because I feel like I'm very lucky that I got to live here in Oman, to be honest, because I feel like India is just, every time I go to India, I get overwhelmed. I love it, but it's overwhelming. It's just too many people. It's amazing. The energy is amazing.
Vibrant, super
yeah,
vibrant.
It's super vibrant. But I feel, you need to have a lot of support system there, in the sense of, so that you don't get lost. And maybe that's coming because I came from a small place like Oman, and I was, I didn't feel the need that I would get lost. So I don't know. So like I said, even when I went to boarding school, I never really lived in, like in with the rest of the crowd. So I never really got to experience. And so now when I go on holiday, now when I take the kids back, now is when I'm experiencing India a little bit. And I still think that, I still live a sheltered life in India. But yeah.
Yeah, because a lot of what you're saying obviously has to do with the way you were brought up.
Yes.
Right? Where you were brought up,
yes.
How you were taught to do things. And sometimes, again, going back to the whole concept, and obviously your cultural being is not fully related to your nationality,
yeah.
but to a certain extent, people still link it to that.
Yeah.
So sometimes it's very important to kind of realize that, okay, this is maybe where I'm from, but I also need to understand how my upbringing was.
Yes.
And how it has played a role in who I am today,
yeah.
right? And what has really impacted me and why I'm the way I am.
Yeah.
And then slowly you start breaking those barriers,
yeah.
right? In order to figure out certain things.
Yeah.
And yes, with some people it might be a bit easier than others. But then on that note, is there some kind of like belief that you had that got broken along the way? Maybe a cultural belief, to be specific. It can be about absolutely anything.
When I had Josh, my older son, and then I was not working then. I was not doing even my social media. I was a chair for Muscat Mums. That was an organization here. So I was very busy in the whole motherhood journey. Loved it at that point, and that was my time then. And then when I had Liam, that's when my second son, that's when I started with this whole social media. And even then it was quite slow. But I remember Josh, as he was growing up and when my social media picked up, and he would, at one point he asked me, he's like, but mom, like, women don't work. And he was very young. He was, I think, in K1. And I was like...
He was the one judging.
I was like, Josh, like, you are like Gen Z. You should not be talking like that. But I feel like because he thought that his mom was staying home then, because at that point I was not staying home. Now they are like, oh my God, our mom is like this. And, because they think that their mom is like a social media influencer. And they're like, oh, like,
She is.
Yeah. No, but like, I'm like, that is not the world. That's not what you need to aim to, in the sense that, because the kids these days, the fascination is for YouTube and the likes and how many followers you have.
Correct.
And it's very different for
Correct.
them. But so now they see, when I go for work and when they see me at events, they're very proud and they say like, oh, their mom took them for, it's like, when their mom is, taking them on a trip or taking them for something, it's like, our mom is doing this. So, I think that makes me feel very proud. And I think in India, obviously, it's changing. I grew up watching my mom work. So for me, like that's always...
the norm.
Yes, that's the norm. My dad and mom cooked together in the kitchen, even till date. They are in their 70s and they still cook today in the kitchen together.
Beautiful.
So for me, that's the norm. That was not the norm in the rest of the Indian families that I have seen.
But that was your internal culture.
That was my internal culture. And so that's what I wanted to bring to my family and my culture. So a lot of the Indian men, okay, now maybe things are changing, but a lot of the Indian men, I would say, don't enter the kitchen and cook. So so for me, watching my dad cook and being an absolutely amazing chef was, that was the way I wanted. And so my boys cook with me in the kitchen. So,
oh, that's beautiful.
As in not all the time, but they bake and they love to be in the kitchen with me because that's their mother-son bonding time, you know. So, so I think, that's, that's nice. So I think these are things that culturally, like, I feel like it's, different. I think my husband is very modern, like he... is not like super, like he opens the door for me in the car, super gentleman. And I think I don't know if all men in today's generation do that. Like,
no,
yeah,
no, nope.
So not all the time.
Yeah.
But like, obviously he used to do that a lot. But I'm saying he's generally a very chivalrous person, which I am trying to teach my boys, So I feel like that's just good manners, I feel. It's nothing to do with feminism or being a boy.
No,
it's just good manners, So and we keep telling them whatever a guy can do, a girl can do. So the boys now know that whatever a guy can do, a girl can do. So,
Raise them well,
exactly.
Them well.
Yeah. So, and respecting every gender, every animal, every living being around. So it's funny, Steph, that now when I'm posting about a lot of the Malayali content, I still get so much hate or comments from people saying that, well, you're not Malayali. And I'm like, well, the last I checked, I am Malayali. You know, I'm born to two Malayali people, so I am Malayali. My passport says I am born in Kerala, so I am Malayali. So yeah, I think that is also within my own culture. So we don't even have to go very far. Like I would say within Indians themselves and within Malayalis themselves, they have issues about accepting people who don't particularly maybe look like how they look, or maybe are not raised up like how they have been raised up, culturally a little bit different from their culture. So even though I am Malayali, we've spoken about how maybe I have a little bit of an international culture.
True.
So they find that not
their norm.
Not their norm, and they say no, you're not accepted. And this is exactly what why I'm trying to promote this, and why I'm with full force, acknowledging
putting it out
there, because I want this stereotype to break, to say that no, you need to be fully, culturally, or you need to look a particular way to, be a race, or you have to be like, I need to be culturally fully a Malayali in order to be a Malayali. No, I can maybe not even have anything to do with a Malayali, but if I'm born a Malayali, I'm a Malayali. Do you know what I mean?
And if I want to be a Malayali, I can.
Yes.
And no one can stop me from being a
Absolutely.
Malayali. If I want to be a Malayali, I can.
Yes, you
I just need to learn how to speak the language.
Yeah. It's one of the toughest languages, but
still. Okay. And I love that you said that, especially that you said how you're kind of trying to break that stereotype.
Yes.
Or you're trying to break how people think.
Yes.
Because it's true.
Yes.
Me being who I am and you being Malayali doesn't make you any less than any other Malayali person.
Absolutely.
It doesn't make you any less of an Indian. It also doesn't make you less of an Omani if you feel that this is who you are, or this is part of who you are, right?
Absolutely.
And again, I love that you brought this up, because it really shows, and again, linking it to the whole podcast, that's the whole point of showing people that who we are is really not related to, I shouldn't be labeled as something based on the way I speak, or based on the way I dress, or based on the way that I, portray things, right?
Exactly.
I might see myself in a certain way and still consider myself to be something.
Yes.
And that's the beauty of it. And I think this is what kind of also played a very big role when it comes to your content.
Yes.
Because I feel like a lot of people also notice that shift.
Yes.
Right? It's like, okay, we're moving from one thing to the other, and really the focus is about who you are.
Yeah.
And maybe this is what you feel you need to do now. Maybe this is what you feel you need to bring to the table.
Yes.
And it can be that you're also kind of discovering your own internal identity right now. And slowly but surely, you're portraying this to the world and showing them that, being a Malayali can mean different things.
Absolutely. And I also feel like it probably also is just to show my children, and the fact that, my son faced that in school, and then, he came out of it. And I want to show the younger generation as well that it doesn't matter which part of the world you live in, but if you feel you belong to something, you can feel you belong to that.
Of course.
And no one in this world should be able to tell you, no, you're not that.
No.
And whether you're a child, whether you're an adult, I still face it as an adult. So it doesn't matter if you're a child, if you're an adult.
Of course.
I feel like stay true to who you are, and that's what it is, right?
And so that's the advice we're giving to people.
Yes.
Stay true to who you are.
Absolutely. And it's a journey. Like it took me time to, it's like I said, I've always been Malayali and very proud of being Malayali, but it was never really in the forefront till now. For some reason it is, and I'm so proud of it.
As you should be.
Yes, I am. And like I said, I may not be like the what the general norm, or we
don't know what that norm is.
That's right. But I am still who I am, and I am just out there living my life and showing people that, just like I said, be true to yourself, and just make the world a nicer place by being kinder to the next person next to you. So yeah, it's as simple as that.
Rachel, I think this conversation was amazing.
Thank you.
I, again, love that you're someone who really breaks barriers. You're someone that speaks their mind, and you're someone that is willing, especially using your platform, you're willing to put everything out there. You're willing to kind of break stereotypes. And you mentioned the young generation, right? It's very important that we now give that image to the younger generation.
Yes.
And so it was a pleasure having you on our podcast today.
Thank
Is there
you,
anything
Steph.
that you would maybe like to end it with, aside from stay true to who you are? Is there anything that you'd like to maybe, like, what advice would you kind of just give?
I feel like find your joy, because I feel
Find joy in the journey.
yeah, because if you are happy no matter what you are, where you are, doing whatever you're doing, that's all that matters at the end of the day. Whether because I feel like even with kids, and I see that because I see with my younger cousins who are unhappy, because unhappiness or being unsatisfied or all of that starts from a very young age, unfortunately, in this today's day and age. So just be happy, don't overcomplicate things, find that joy in the little thing, and just live life.
All right, and stay true to who you are.
Yes.
Well, thank you, Rachel.
Thank you,
It was
Steph, for
lovely
having me.
you.
It was amazing to talk to you too.
So the key takeaways from today's podcast, well, it's actually one takeaway, and it's be true to who you are, because who you are is a unique cultural being. Stay tuned for the next episodes, and don't forget to follow and subscribe.